For years, Kody and Robyn Brown have weaponized a single therapy buzzword to isolate themselves, ice out the rest of the family, and dodge any real accountability. That word is unsafe. We have heard it repeated ad nauseum across recent seasons. Safe conversations, safe spaces, unsafe behavior. It became the ultimate trump card to shut down any dialogue that did not completely center Kody's fragile ego or Robyn's perpetual victimhood. But in all their self-righteous grandstanding, they conveniently forgot who actually coined that term in the Brown family. It wasn't a highly paid family therapist. It wasn't Robyn crying on a couch about being misunderstood. It was a terrified, traumatized little girl named Truly. And now, the very catchphrase Kody used to build his patriarchal fortress might be the exact thing that tears it down in a court of law. If you are ready to uncover the massive hypocrisy that could cost Kody everything, impress that like button and subscribe to Jenny Exposes right now, because we are diving deep into the ultimate sister wives self-own. Let us travel back to season 14, episode 11. The internet never forgets, and Reddit sleuths have recently uncovered and mass shared a horrifying clip that completely destroys Kody's current narrative as the great protector of his children. The scene was set up to be a classic, wholesome television milestone, a father teaching his youngest kids how to ride a bike. But what was captured on literal TLC footage was something visceral, uncomfortable, and deeply revealing about Kody's psychology. Truly, who was incredibly anxious and visibly distressed from the very beginning, was placed on a bike that was entirely too big for her. She was begging to stop. She was crying. And what was Kody's response? He aggressively ignored her pleas. In the clip, Truly explicitly states the very words that would later define the family's downfall. She looks at her father and tells him, "It is not safe." This is the trap moment that Kody walked right into. Millions of viewers watched as he ran behind that bike, gleefully bulldozing his daughter's consent. She was panicking. She was saying no, and Kody simply laughed. He mocked her boundaries on national television. When she bravely asserted that it was her body and she was not going to ride the bike, Kody dismissed her entirely, telling her she was too young to make choices for herself. He didn't just ignore a child's fear. He actively belittled her autonomy. He pushed her past the point of gentle encouragement straight into emotional distress, all while letting his favorite son Solomon ride around freely, which only exacerbated Truly's anxiety and feelings of inadequacy. The contradiction is absolutely staggering. The man who demands safe conversations from his adult wives was perfectly comfortable making his prepubescent daughter feel completely unsafe, both physically and emotionally, just to satisfy his own ego and create what he thought would be a triumphant reality television moment. This brings us to a massive credibility dilemma, a double bind that Kody is currently trapped in. In his recent custody pushes and legal wrangling following his split from Christine, Kody has consistently tried to paint himself as a devoted father who was unfairly separated from his children. He claims he is the victim of parental alienation. He tells anyone who will listen that he is the fierce protector of his family. But how does a man explain to a family court judge that his definition of protection involves blatantly ignoring his child's absolute terror? If Christine's legal team decides to introduce this unedited, publicly broadcasted footage during a custody evaluation or mediation, the narrative shifts instantly. Kody goes from being a misunderstood, eccentric reality television star to a documented emotional abuser. This isn't hearsay. This isn't a situation where Kody can just blame Christine's influence or claim the children have been brainwashed against him. This is high-definition video evidence of Kody's utter inability to read his child's emotional cues or respect her physical limits. The stakes here are escalating exponentially, both financially and professionally. Family courts prioritize the best interests of the child, and a key component of that is a parent's ability to foster a safe, secure, and supportive environment. When you have a father who views a child's boundary as a challenge to his authority that simply must be broken, you have a massive legal liability. If this footage is weaponized in court, it could entirely tank his chances of getting any unsupervised visitation, let alone the 50-50 custody he seems to think he is automatically entitled to. The financial implications are just as severe. Less custody means higher child support payments, and a shattered public image means fewer opportunities to monetize his platform outside of the show. He is fighting a battle where his own past behavior is his greatest enemy. Let's look at the concrete example that serves as the absolute knockout blow to Kody and Robyn's entire public facade. Imagine the split screen that could be played in a courtroom or in the court of public opinion. On one side, you have Robyn, dramatically wiping away non-existent tears, telling the cameras that Christine is unsafe to be around, using that buzzword to justify completely cutting off a woman who helped raise the entire family. On the other side of the screen, you cut directly to the visceral footage of Kody running behind Truly's bike. You hear the panic in her voice. You hear her begging him to stop. You see the sheer terror in her eyes because she is genuinely scared for her physical safety. The contrast is absolutely sickening. The adults in this family weaponize the concept of safety to protect themselves from mild criticism and accountability, while actively ignoring the literal, desperate cries for safety from a vulnerable child. It exposes the absolute core of Kody's behavioral flaw, his absolute refusal to respect female autonomy. Whether it is his adult wives expressing a need for equal partnership or his daughter expressing a physical boundary, Kody views their autonomy as a direct insult. If a female in his orbit says no, he takes it as a challenge. He must break their resolve to reassert his dominance. When confronted with his own abhorrent behavior, Kody's instinct is never self-reflection. It is always deflection, rationalization, and spin. As the backlash to this resurfaced footage grows, we see the foundation of his failed emotional appeal taking shape. He attempts to reframe this undeniable display of trauma as an exercise in tough love, a necessary paternal push meant to build his daughter's confidence and resilience. He wants the audience, and potentially a family court judge, to believe that he was simply a traditional father trying to teach his kid how to ride a bike, a normal childhood rite of passage that sometimes requires a firm, uncompromising hand. But the public is not buying it, and more importantly, credentialed professionals are absolutely not buying it. Over the past several months, child psychologists, family trauma therapists, and behavioral experts across YouTube and TikTok have taken this exact clip and stitched it into their own clinical analyses. They have definitively, unanimously labeled his actions not as tough love, but as deeply toxic, invalidating, and traumatizing. These professionals point out that Kody is completely disconnected from Truly's autonomic nervous system. When a child is in a state of severe dysregulation, frozen in panic, hyperventilating, and begging for an activity to stop, forcing them to continue does not build resilience. It builds a core memory of profound betrayal. It teaches the child that their voice fundamentally does not matter, that their physical boundaries are completely irrelevant, and that the very person who is biologically wired to protect them is actually the source of their terror. Kody's attempt to spin this as a character-building exercise shatters completely under the scrutiny of modern psychological understanding. He is not building her confidence up. He is systematically breaking her spirit down simply to force her compliance on his terms. This brings us directly to the profound thematic hypocrisy that defines Kody Brown's entire existence, which is the core moral failing that has driven his plural family completely into the ground. For years, we have watched this man sit on therapy couches and demand safe conversations. We have watched him storm out of living rooms, refuse to engage with his wives, and weaponize his affection, all under the guise of protecting his own emotional safety. He has hijacked clinical therapy speak to create a toxic environment where any criticism of his leadership, any demand for basic marital equality, and any expression of dissatisfaction from his wives is immediately shut down and labeled as unsafe. Yet this very same man, a man who demands absolute emotional coddling from everyone around him just to protect his profoundly fragile ego, blatantly and shamelessly ignores the literal physical and emotional safety of his youngest daughter. He uses the concept of safety as an impenetrable shield to deflect accountability for himself, but utterly refuses to offer that exact same safety to a terrified child in his direct care. In Kody's twisted worldview, the word safe has been entirely stripped of its actual protective meaning. To Kody, safe simply means compliant. A safe conversation is merely one where he is agreed with and validated. An unsafe environment is simply one where his authority is challenged. He did not care about Truly's actual physical safety on that oversized bicycle. He only cared that her refusal to ride it was challenging his paternal authority in front of the reality television cameras. This staggering hypocrisy has led to his ultimate isolation and a massive reality check that he is entirely unequipped to handle. The audience has universally, completely, and permanently sided with Truly. There is no gray area here, no debated nuance in the comment sections. Even casual viewers who haven't watched a single episode of Sister Wives in 10 years are stumbling across this resurfaced clip on social media and reacting with pure, unfiltered disgust. The internet has fiercely rallied behind this little girl, cementing Kody's reputation not just as a neglectful husband, but as the ultimate, irredeemable reality television villain. In the court of public opinion, he has already lost everything. The audience sees right through the aggressive patriarchal posturing, the dramatic deflection, and Robyn's fake tears. They see a bully. They see a man who is so desperately starved for absolute control that he will terrorize his own weeping child just to get a taste of it. And this massive public isolation is perfectly mirroring his current personal isolation. As 3 of his wives have packed up and left, and as the vast majority of his adult children have completely distanced themselves from his toxic orbit, Kody is left alone with Robyn in a shrinking, paranoid echo chamber. He is entirely unable to escape the permanent digital footprint of his own abusive behavior, and the clock is ticking down to the moment it officially catches up with him. This brings us to the ultimate point of no return, the climactic legal conclusion where Kody Brown's entire narcissistic empire finally collapses under the weight of one single, perfectly chosen word. Fast forward to the present day. Truly is no longer that terrified, weeping little girl being forced onto a bicycle against her will. Thanks to Christine's immense courage in packing up and leaving Flagstaff, Truly has grown into an articulate, observant teenager who has watched her mother break the chains of a toxic marriage. She has found her voice, and as Kody desperately attempts to claw back some semblance of control through the family court system, demanding 50-50 custody or unsupervised visitation to soothe his bruised ego and salvage his public image, he faces a reality he never saw coming. In custody battles involving teenagers, the court listens heavily to the preferences and experiences of the child. Imagine the scene behind the closed doors of a family court mediation room. Kody is likely using his classic playbook, demanding his rights, playing the victim of parental alienation, and insisting that he is a safe, loving father who has simply been misunderstood by his bitter ex-wives. But then, the mediator asks Truly for her perspective. And Truly, armed with years of firsthand experience and the undeniable proof of her own filmed trauma, delivers the absolute knockout blow. She officially, clearly, and unequivocally uses the word unsafe to describe her father. It is the ultimate, devastating poetic justice. This is not just a teenager saying she does not want to visit her dad. This is a child weaponizing her father's own favorite buzzword to secure her permanent freedom. For over a decade, Kody and Robyn trained this entire family that the word unsafe was the ultimate trump card. They established the rule that if someone feels unsafe, all negotiations stop, all boundaries must be accommodated, and the person claiming to be unsafe gets whatever they want without question. They built an entire patriarchal fortress out of that one word. And now, Truly is using that exact same word to lock him out of her life forever. Kody cannot argue with her use of the term without exposing his own blatant hypocrisy. He cannot tell a judge that Truly is misusing the word because millions of people have literally watched him create an environment where she was physically and emotionally terrified. When Truly looks at a legal professional and says that Kody Brown is unsafe, she is not just using a therapy buzzword to get out of an uncomfortable conversation like Robyn does. She is referencing a documented, broadcasted history of a man who blatantly ignored her physical boundaries, mocked her tears, and prioritized his television ego over her fundamental well-being. This is where Kody's past behavior becomes an inescapable legal trap. Family court mediators and judges are highly trained to recognize the difference between a child who is simply echoing a bitter parent and a child who is expressing genuine, deep-seated anxiety based on repeated behavioral patterns. Truly's claim of being unsafe is backed up by hundreds of hours of reality television footage that corroborates her exact feelings. When she tells a mediator about the bike incident, or the lack of effort to see her, or the constant emotional volatility of her father, she is painting a clear, undeniable picture of a toxic environment. And by legally defining Kody as unsafe, she fundamentally, permanently changes the power dynamic. Kody can no longer demand her presence. He can no longer force her to comply with his vision of a patriarchal family structure. By turning his own household catchphrase against him, Truly takes back the power that was stolen from her on that bicycle all those years ago. She draws a final, impenetrable boundary that not even Kody Brown can bulldoze his way through. The irony is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. A man who spent his entire life demanding obedience and safe spaces from his wives is ultimately defeated by the quiet, resolute truth of his youngest daughter. He weaponized therapy to isolate himself with his favorite wife, and in the end, that exact same language is being used to legally and permanently isolate him from the children he neglected. Truly's bravery in naming her experience is not just a personal victory. It is a profound vindication for every single viewer who sat in horror watching that season 14 episode, wishing someone would step in and rescue that little girl. She rescued herself. And in doing so, she gave us the most satisfying reality television conclusion we could have ever hoped for. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive on Jenny Exposes. If your jaw hit the floor during that bike scene just like mine did, and if you are completely Team Truly in this entire custody mess, I need you to smash that like button right now. It really helps push this video out to other Sister Wives fans who need to hear the truth. Make sure you hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload, because we have so many more reality television secrets, lies, and hypocrisies to expose. Drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Do you think Christine's lawyers will actually use the TLC footage in court? I want to read all your theories. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video.